My name is Lana and I'm very grateful to be sitting in front of you today, and I appreciate the opportunity of presenting my research for Pilates for postural stability in computer users. I'm extremely passionate about my field. I'm extremely passionate about Pilates. I'm extremely passionate about working with people and encouraging community involvement in Pilates in my country as well as globally. This opportunity has been presented to me by the World Pilates Federation. I have to say a very, very, very big thank you to Iman for all the communication and all the hard work that has gone into preparing for this Congress, and I wish everybody all the success. At the time of my research project, which was the year 2008, seems like a really long time ago, I had the privilege in learning Pilates Mat Level 1, and thereafter I have taught, lectured and been educated for the last 15 years in everything there is to do about the Pilates method. It is a passion of mine. I love giving back to the community, and I also love to research Pilates. The purpose of this study was to determine the impact of a Pilates intervention program in the workplace for computer users. An exploratory, descriptive, quasi-experimental approach was used to gain insight of the Pilates intervention program on the dependent variables for overall stability, medial lateral and anterior posterior indexes, which were measured by the Biodex balance system. Non-probability sampling technique was used to delineate the groups into the experimental and control. The sample included both male and female participants of the age range 29 to 59 years old. The experimental and control group consisted of 20 members each. The intervention program was for 8 weeks in duration. Measurement of the assessment was done by the Biodex balance system. The Biodex stability system challenges a participant's balance while on a movable platform. Quantitative data was measured through a pre- and post-design by both the experimental and the control group. Descriptive and inferential statistical techniques in the form of ANCOVA were used to measure the impact of the Pilates intervention program. During the year of the study, 2008, there was an increase in mobile devices, computers, laptops, and a general information technology age. This increase has given rise to an enormous musculoskeletal disorder problem. In today's life, computers, mobile devices form such an integral part of our lifestyle. You will shop online, you will buy groceries online, you will pay rent online, and this forms such an integral part of who we are. How do we see this benefiting our daily lives? How do we see physical exercise and posture control improving while we continue to sit hunched over our devices? In today's life, computers, mobile devices form such an integral part of our lifestyle. You will shop online, you will buy groceries online, you will pay rent online, and this forms such an integral part of who we are. How do we see this benefiting our daily lives? How do we see physical exercise and posture control improving while we continue to sit hunched over our devices. In a recent study, 2016, it was found that office computer workers spend on average 6 to 12 hours per day on their computers or on their devices. Lower back pain is a worldwide disability epidemic. I want to emphasize how improving postural control will directly influence a person's walking habits, a person's sitting habits, and a person's running habits. Walking from your car, walking from the bank, walking around, doing daily activities. Occupations have become so seated. You sit long hours of the day. All these muscles take such strain. There is a bad habit forming in the body. The muscle fatigue is enormous. Therefore, it goes without saying, seated posture is muscle fatigue and unbalanced posture, which causes neck, middle back, lower back, and shoulder pain every day. Postural stability plays an enormous role in everyday life. When my study was coming about, there was very limited research on postural stability and postural control. There is many articles with regards to lower back, neck pain, but very few that focused on balance of the body and the postural control that you use to sit doing your work in the car, walking around. Rushka defined posturally perfect. Rushka defines posture as a reflection of the position of many systems that are regulated, determined and created through limited functional patterns. These patterns reflect a person's ability and inability to breathe, rotate, and rest. Many previous attempts in literature to evaluate computer users' postures, however, only few have focused on a physical intervention program and used it to improve this epidemic that we have. There's been such little research even since then. I have managed to find a couple, and I will refer back to those at the end. Postural training is profitable for both the mind and the body. Postural rehabilitation has physical and psychological considerations. Improved posture and increased body awareness is important because when you become fatigued, you don't recognize why you are becoming fatigued. Sitting down for many, many hours, concentrating on the screen, concentrating at the work, all these hours come together at the end, and the posture is not correct and not aligned to be able to withstand this amount of hourly consumption of your time. Pilates method, a fantastic intervention program used to combat this postural stability epidemic that we face. The 3 studies that I focused on, there were 2 in 2004 and then 1 in 2006. Again, very little research on Pilates as an intervention program. That doesn't mean that there wasn't other intervention programs throughout history. I'm sure there were many, but Pilates itself, very few. Pilates is performed in a neutral spine. The neutral spine and the neutral pelvis. The neutral pelvis is halfway mark between the anterior and the posterior tilt. A neutral spine is biomechanically and functionally correct. The co-contraction of multifidus and the transverse abdominis is imperative for postural stability and postural control. Your set of postural muscles that defines postural stability is the transversus abdominis, multifidus, internal and external obliques. And the co-contraction of the transversus abdominis and the multifidus gives up that length. Pilates encompasses control. It encompasses precision. It encompasses concentration on the movement, on every repetition that is happening, on every rep. So in the groups that I taught for this 8-week duration, we built a procedure, we built an understanding, a progression in which the clients understood these type of principles, applied the principles in the classroom, in Pilates, and then used these principles to go back to work with. For instance, if they were sitting at the computer and they knew that they were going to do this every single day, they wouldn't be as hunched over. They would be trying to elongate their spine as they carried on with work. For instance, focusing on the breath patterns, trying to breathe laterally at the computer desk rather than breathing high up into the neck and into the shoulder area, where often this was the pain and the cause of many sick working days, illness days that they had to take off. The Pilates intervention program used was structured as a warm-up and then as the exercises. Warm-up contained breathing exercises, pelvis exercises, spine exercises, and general mobility work to prepare the body to perform the exercises correctly. To name a few: head knots, scapular isolation, arm circles, imprint and release, hip rolls, which all contribute to the mobility of the spine and the surrounding muscular patterns of the body. The exercises used in the Pilates program followed a particular list that made sure the participants were going up the level as they went along. So the warm-up, the breathing technique, lateral breathing, towards the abdominal work, towards the back extension work, the spinal rotation, the side line, and then a focus more on stability and strengthening. Many of the exercises used were also modified, and assistance was provided for those participants that hadn't done Pilates before. For the participants that knew how to breathe perhaps from previous physical exercise programs, they relearned different techniques and a better technique in the term of lateral breathing. During the study, I had a small sample size, which made it so much more functional to see who was doing what in the classes, as well as whether they were doing the exercises correctly. All of this had to be measured by the Biodex balance system. The biodeck stability system challenges a participant's balance while on a movable platform. Our research sampling was non-probability convenience sampling. There were 2 groups, 20 participants per group. Volunteers were selected by snowball technique. Must have been using a computer for at least 3 years in duration. The difference between an exercise personal training program and a Pilates program is majority of the time the reps, the repetition per exercise. For this intervention program, the repetitions per exercise were only 8 to 12. For a higher level of repetition, you are looking at a more endurance-based and more cardiovascular-based workout program. Whereas the Pilates-based program that was implemented is more of a posture-based program. Every repetition has a defined quality of movement. There is a number of factors involved in the quality of the movement, and those, as a teacher, you need to be able to assist, modify, challenge, and help your clients. For my groups, my experimental group particularly, they were doing the reps based on 8 to 10, not even 12, 8 to 10 correct movement patterns. For instance, a half rollback where you are seated with the legs in front, the knees are bent, and the arms are straight out in front of you. The lumbar spine is in flexion, thoracic is in flexion, cervical is in flexion. When the participants rolled back, there's a certain point that you would breathe in and a certain point when you would breathe out. For instance, a 4-breath pattern was used for the beginners doing the half rollback. Breathing in to start, breathing out to roll back, breathing in to stay and pause in the movement, and then breathing out to come back up. In this movement, we also discussed what else was happening in the body. The body wasn't just doing an abdominal crunch or an abdominal exercise. The body was acting as a whole. The breath was involved, the foot placement, the knees bent, the hip flexors indirectly loading the transverse abdominis, the lumbar spine in full flexion. If they needed an assist, a small cushion was placed behind the lumbar spine. Also, as they were rolling back, the neck wasn't coming forward, the shoulders, the scapular stability, the latissimus dorsi, the trapezius, they weren't overproducing the movement. All of these aspects come into play when you are using a Pilates intervention program. At the completion of the pre and post test assessment, the data was recorded on a data sheet in Excel, as you can see in the graph above, for both the experimental and control groups. Analysis of data was performed utilizing descriptive and inferential statistics through the help of a statistician at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. Descriptive statistics investigates the mean, ranges, and standard deviations of a measure to produce more logical, understandable, and manageable information. By far the most popular and useful measure of central location is the arithmetic mean. The mean was used in the study to calculate the average of the dependent variables for postural stability, that is the overall index, as you can see above. Thereafter, anterior-posterior and medial-lateral stability changes that occurred in computer users as measurements in the pre- and post-test respectively. These scores were furthermore interpreted statistically using ANCOVA. ANCOVA is used when the researcher wants to neutralize the effect of a continuous independent variable in the experiment. In the study, the following independent variables were compensated for in the overall postural stability indexes: the relationship between the ages of the experimental group pre-test and the control group pre-test, the relationship between the experimental group pre-test and the control group pre-test, the relationship between the height of the experimental group pre-test and the control group pre-test, and finally the relationship of the experimental group's height pre-test and control group's height pre-test. ANCOVA revealed that there was a statistically significant difference, the p-value was under 0.05, between the overall stability post-test scores of the experimental and the control groups. Participant scores were then calculated for the anterior, posterior, and medial lateral directions, which represent the variance of platform displacement for motions occurring in the sagittal and frontal planes. The experimental group recorded a pre-test anterior-posterior score of 0.75 and a post-test mean score of 0.4. The control group recorded a pre-test anterior-posterior score of 0.94 and the post-test mean score of 0.68. The anterior-posterior postural stability index score of the experimental group improved by 0.35 and the control group improved by 0.25 from pre-test to post-test. Pre- and post-test postural stability medial lateral scores. The experimental group recorded a pre-test medial lateral score of 0.56 and the post-test mean score of 0.30. The control group recorded the pre-test 0.68 and post-test 0.51. The medial lateral postural stability index score of the experimental group improved by 0.26. As per the table, the results again is that there is a statistical significant difference between the two groups. ETA squared showed that the Pilates intervention was practically significant as it was greater than 0.25. Measures of dispersion were also measured by the balanced Biodex system for each participant. The measures of dispersion were used and analyzed as a supplement to the overall anterior, posterior, and medial lateral scores. A decrease in scores over 3 consecutive trials measured pre- and post-intervention is seen as favorable. An increased displacement from the center point of the Biodex platform is displayed as a higher score, which is seen as unfavorable. Resulting measures found on the graph. The experimental group recorded a pre-test overall measure of dispersion, 0.88, and a post-test measure of dispersion, 0.34. The control group recorded a pre-test, 0.92, and a post-test, 0.65. The overall measure of dispersion score of the experimental group improved by 0.53. The table shows the ANCOVA results for the overall, the anterior-posterior, and medial-lateral measurements of dispersion. In all three, there were statistically significant differences between the experimental pre- and post-test and the experimental and control groups. It also reveals that the anterior-posterior and medial-lateral both have statistically significant differences of 0.001 and 0.000 respectively. ETA squared showed that the Pilates intervention was practically significant, as in all three they were greater than 0.25. The aim of the study was to measure the impact of the 8-week Pilates intervention program. The objectives of the study was used to assess and describe the overall anterior, posterior, and medial lateral indexes measured by the Balance Biodex system. This measurement was taken pre and post the Pilates intervention program. Statistically, there was a difference between the experimental pre and post, as well as the control pre and post. But more importantly, how much was the statistical difference? Was it practically significant? And the answer is yes. There was a practical statistical difference in the post-test of the experimental group. Statistically, the overall stability index had the highest improvement of 0.43. Intervention program proved to be practically significant. The ETA squared showed that the size of the treatment effect for all 3 postural stability scores was large. Yay! The ETA squared results showed that the size of the treatment effect for all 3 measures of dispersion scores was also large. Today's society lends to a sedentary lifestyle. Sedentary in IT, information technology, sedentary in long-distance driving, sedentary in watching the mobile phone for a long amount of time. All of these aspects lend to pain. Pain in the neck, pain in the lower back, pain in the thorax. All of these lead to a sedentary lifestyle. We're meant to be mobile. We are meant to be flexible. We're meant to be strong. We're meant to run outside without even thinking about it. We're not meant to be taking many, many days off and fixing the pain that we have caused because we are sitting for such a long amount of time during the day. There are so many people in the world that struggle with musculoskeletal disorders. These people need our help. We, as practitioners, as professionals, need to help. We need to combat this continuous forward dominant posture, the kyphosis that is developed with time. We need to strengthen, we need to stretch, we need to help people to understand why Pilates and other structural-based programs, not fitness-based, postural structured programs, need to be used in the workplace, need to be used everywhere, need to be used for the professional cyclist, for the triathlete, for workers, for every family member, teenagers, children. This needs to come into the forefront of education. I want to thank you for listening today. I know that there was a lot of graphs, I know that there was a lot of stats, but I feel that research like this is vital, especially when we're going into a technological age that is only going to get worse with time. I want to thank everybody that supported me, whether online, my clients, my family, and particularly those who have surrounded me with positivity. I love enthusiasm. I want to help people. I want to help combat this epidemic. And I hope that you've enjoyed everything I had to say today. And I hope it's going to be useful in your teaching and statistically different lifestyle that you're going to live. Are you sitting tall? Have you got that elongated spine? Can you smile? And can you enjoy life to the fullest? Thank you so very much for this opportunity. I would love to chat again. As I said a little bit earlier, there was more recent literature review that I have. If you are interested, you are more than welcome to email me, and I'll put my email at the bottom of the screen. Thank you.